This is the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, coming at you live on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter/X account. Of course, you can listen to this podcast as well on replay at IdahoSports.com and wherever you download your podcasts. And if you're not hanging out live with us, it's all right. You can watch the replay as well on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter account. We are here to talk District 5 and 6 happenings. My name is Brandon Baney. We're joined by our East Idaho expert, Sean Kane. What's up, Sean?
Hey, how's it going? It's going. I'm excited. I'm excited to dive into it today. It's been a while. We got a little snow here in eastern Idaho, and man, it's cold outside, but the action is steamy hot, either on the wrestling mat or on the basketball court here in East Idaho.
Yeah, no doubt, dude. And I always hate talking weather to start the show. Really quickly though, I will mention, it is where I live in North Idaho, 35 degrees and like raining. I feel like it's Seattle. There's no snow to be found.
Well, if you maybe grow some long hair, put on a flannel, bring your guitar on the cast, maybe we'll start talking then. No, it's been pretty warm mostly, and but it's gotten kind of cold. But we've had some like 40-50 degree days over Christmas break, so yeah, who knows? So someone said it's an El Nino year, and I have no idea what that means, but I'm glad to be here though. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm down for that for sure. I only brought that up because usually when we do this East Idaho Prepcast, Pierce always tunes in and he always lets me know, hey, it's still cold and windy down here in East Idaho, Brandon. He keeps me in the loop of what's happening. So,
well, the windy part I don't think will ever go away. I've never been anywhere where it's not windy in East Idaho, so I always complain about those windmills, but in reality, when I think about it, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. So if you are watching this live on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, or Twitter account, if you could hit that like button and then share this when it's done, it'll help everybody find the replay a little easier amongst the social media algorithms. And if you want to hop in the conversation, you want to throw a comment up, we will throw it up on the screen and break it down for you. So thank you for tuning in. Sean, before we get to all the holiday basketball action that took place at all these various tournaments, I did want to give a shout out to our wrestlers real quick. Now, of course, we do have the IdahoSports.com Mat Chat Prepcast, which is our separate standalone Prepcast we do every Tuesday night live at 8 p.m. Mountain Time, where we only talk about wrestling. We usually go for about an hour, but sometimes we have the wrestling conversations spill over into our normal prepcasts as well. It's the biggest weekend of the year outside of state, of course. The Raleigh Lane Invitational taking place at the Idaho Center in Nampa. Sean, 98 schools coming down to compete this year.
Yeah, and they probably have to bring the mats, right? When they do state there, I always like it when they roll out all the other teams' mats, right? Because obviously the Idaho Center doesn't have wrestling mats, so you've got all the different schools' mats represented. So it's a quilt of sweat and tears and joy.
Yeah, it's going to be a really exciting time. There's several teams coming from East Idaho, of course. American Falls is going to head over and see how they stack up. Highland, Thunder Ridge, Madison's going over, Pocatello is headed over, etc. A couple of schools, Sean, are splitting up their squads. It's almost like in like baseball or track and field, the split squad, where some of the athletes are going to the Raleigh Lane invite to compete kind of individually, to see how they can stack up against, the best of the best, because this is bringing teams from all over Idaho, North Idaho, Magic Valley, East Idaho, of course, the Treasure Valley, but also teams from Nevada, Oregon, Washington, even a couple from California coming up to compete. So, for example, American Falls and Century are sending some of their wrestlers to compete at the Raleigh Lane invite, and then the rest of the teams are going to go to the Buell Invitational. It's the 50th annual Buell Invite this weekend. So like South Fremont, American Falls, Century are all kind of splitting up their squads. The Buell Invitational typically, Sean, is kind of a good preview of what the 3A state tournament's going to be. Anybody that's a power in 3A or 2A wrestling is usually at the Buell Invite.
Yeah, you take care of business at Buell Invite. You're in the driver's seat for that blue trophy at the end of the year, that's for sure. But the Buell Invites become, just a big, huge event. And I was going to say is, you've got the individual on IdahoSports.com. We've got the individual rankings of weights and who they think, are the top programs. And there's a comment posted there about how the girls, it's all the schools together, but the guys are listed in classification. The nice thing about this big tournament in the boys area is you're going to get all the classifications competing. So you're going to get the best 108 pounder period. So you kind of get to see that at these big tournaments, which is really neat with all the different weights and classifications mixing in there.
Yeah, that's the big thing with the girls' rankings is we don't get that head-to-head data as much since it is an all-encompassing, everybody in the state competes in one division type of deal. But yes, as we get more and more matches under our belts, we get more accurate data. And so, yes, you can find those rankings on our website at IdahoSports.com. And then last thing I was going to mention, Sean, quickly, we do have a couple of wrestlers going to the Doc B. These are this is a top 5 tournament nationally. It's in Clovis, California at Clovis High School. Doc B is the Doc Buchanan. It's the Doc Buchanan Wrestling Tournament. It is the upper crust, as it were. Mac Mauger from Blackfoot is going there to compete, second year in a row. Saxton Scott as well. Now, Saxton Scott wrestled at Bonneville last year. He has since transferred to another school. He has been denied participation by the IHSAA and is appealing that process. That's still playing out. So Saxton can't really compete with his new team yet. He is going to the Doc B invite, though, and he's competing unattached, right? We see that sometimes in track and field or like in tennis, right?
Yeah.
Somebody will go just on their own. We're not representing a team or a school. I'm just here unattached. So regardless, Saxton is one of our own here in East Idaho. We'll be cheering he and Mac Mauger from Blackfoot on this weekend at the Doc B in California also. So
yeah, and the Doc B's got that cool cowboy hat logo, I think, for their wrestling tournament. So that I think that makes a great shirt if you can look that up.
It is. It's a pretty slick logo, no doubt about it. So, and again, if you want more in-depth wrestling content, check out the Matt Chat Prepcast here on IdahoSports.com. All right, let's dive into holiday hoops action. Sean, I figured we could start on the girls' side and then work our way over to the boys' action, if that sounds all right to you.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, biggest story was the East Idaho Holiday Shootout. This was hosted by Idaho Falls, Rigby, Skyline, and Bonneville. Brought several girls and boys teams to the city of Idaho Falls for a fun 4 days of competition. Specifically on the girls' side, Sean, the conversation has to start with Pocatello. The Lady Thunder go and win the girls' bracket. They defeat Lakeland in overtime in the opening round, 66-56. They beat Skyline in the semis, 58-45. And then this was the real shocker. Not the fact that Pocatello won, but they won going away over the defending champs from last year in Sandpoint. They win 66-43, knocking off Sandpoint and giving the Bulldogs just their second loss of the season. Pocatello is peaking at the right time here, Sean.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this going into that. If Pocatello could beat a Sandpoint, they're kind of looking for that signature win. And by far and away, this is probably their biggest signature win of the season. And, you had Kenna Garza pouring down 24 points in that game, in that championship game against Sandpoint, in which me and you had both have talked about, is that we kind of thought that was a key. If she could get going inside, it's going to be tough to beat them. And I watched that game and on IdahoSports.com, and that's what it was. Lost second chance opportunities. She's down low grinding, and it's a very difficult. And I think Abby Lusk is also, she's not small. she's like a Scottie Pippen. If I could think of a basketball player, very lengthy, can dribble it, can get down low. She's a very Scottie Pippen player. I know a lot of boys teams would love to have her on their team just by all the things she can do. Scottie Pippen, but can kind of shoot like a Kukoc. I don't know. I got a lot of Bulls references. That's all I got for you. But they did a phenomenal job. And I think they were looking for that signature win, and they did it with Sandpoint. And the game wasn't close.
Yeah, it was a complete runaway for Pocatello, and you're right. The two bigs, as it were, Kenna Garza and Abby Lusk, two totally different players, right? Garza's more of your traditional post, back to the basket, gets in there and rebounds. Abby Lusk is more of a stretch four. I mean, she can handle the ball. She can go out and shoot. Kenna Garza can shoot from the outside as well. But they complement each other so well. And Garza's 6'3", Lusk is like 6'2", maybe. And so sometimes that doesn't work. It's like, oh man, we're too clogged up in the paint. But they complement each other so well that it really does make going up against Pocatello hard. And I really think, especially defensively, Pocatello really disrupted that Sandpoint offense that is predicated on motion and reading the defense.
Yeah, and then you've also got like Taylor Rogers. If she hits shots, and Hagler hit their shots, I mean, that's a tough team to beat, because we got both those bigs working in the middle or doing whatever they're doing. But if the other complement of players for Pocatello hit their shots, which seem to happen a lot in this tournament, it's going to make them very difficult to beat.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So congratulations to Pocatello for winning the East Idaho Holiday Shootout. It ended up being a really good third place matchup between Skyline and Snake River, 4A versus 3A. Snake River ends up defeating the Lady Grizz 60-51. So Snake River officially takes third place. They beat Highland in the opening round pretty convincingly, 50-27. They lost to Sandpoint by a possession in the semis, 66-63. Then they turn around and beat Skyline by 9 for third place. Hey, what else is new? Snake River going out and achieving excellence.
Yeah, Snake River played great. I saw some of those games. They just have obviously they have one of the best players in 3A on the team, but I think all the complement of players are just really good too. And Baldwin and Carlson, they just have a lot of depth, I think, for a 3A team. I don't think you're going to see a ton of teams at that 3A level with the depth off that bench.
Yeah, a really impressive performance. And then, of course, for Skyline as well, they go 1-2 and take fourth place. They beat Jordan, Utah, 68-38, 30-point win there. They lose to Pocatello in the semis by 13, 58-45. They lose by 9 to Snake River. Really the first couple of times that Skyline's taken it on the chin this year, Sean. I'm very interested to see how the Lady Grizz respond from this.
Yeah, we're coming down to the end, right? We're coming down to pretty much conference games left for these teams, and we know that District 6 conference is going to be kind of a nightmare going forward. I think, you have Shelley right up there, who came to this tournament as well and played one game and beat Madison pretty handily. And you're kind of fighting for second, not saying Shelley's unbeatable, but Snake River is going to have to kind of get gut check time right now. I think what you do now is kind of leading up to the end.
Yeah, Skyline is in the mix of all those other teams we talked about. Yeah, you mentioned Shelley kind of came over for a game. There was a couple of teams that did that. Highland got the one game in and they lost. And Shelley came over and beat Madison 67-35 for their only game. And
Blackfoot came, for one.
Yeah, Blackfoot. Go ahead.
And Ty Shippen told me it's Highland from Utah pulled out is why they ended up having to do that. Because I emailed them. I'm like, why did these guys only play one game? And you're limited to 20 games, so they only had room for one game. And luckily, they're Ty Shippen. You got hats off to him for doing this tournament. He's a mastermind of the Excel sheet and getting games played. One of the great athletic minds in East Idaho for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So there were a couple of one-off games. We talked about Skyline. They get back at it, Sean, on Friday night, January 5th. They're going to be at Hillcrest. And then the following Tuesday on the 9th at the Taj McGrizz, they welcome in Shelley. I mean, this is an important little 2-game stretch here to start the new year for the Lady Grizz. 10-3 overall, 3-0 in the conference. They'll see Shelley for the first time on Tuesday night at Skyline. There were a couple of other teams that played. Madison went 1-2 at the tournament. They lost to Sandpoint by 7, 49-42. They beat Blackfoot, and then they lost to Shelley. They were kind of like the opponent for all the one-offs. And then we also had Teton in a separate bracket go 3-0, Sean. So Teton also won their bracket at the East Idaho Holiday Shootout. They beat Century 53-16, Bonneville 67-56, and then Lakeland 61-41. This is a Teton team that is really good. In fact, I voted in the first girls basketball media poll of the year earlier today, Sean, and that should be coming out on IdahoSports.com this afternoon. I voted Teton number 1 in the 3A poll.
14-0.
Yeah.
I think there's only one other team that's undefeated that I can think off the top of my head, but Teton's 14-0. I mean, I would have liked to see him in that other bracket, see what happened there. Yeah. I mean, I think this is a Teton team that is, man, and they've beaten Snake River once already, I believe, too. So, man, it could be an all East Idaho final when it comes down to 3A girls basketball for sure.
Yeah, Teton's 14-0. They beat Snake River back on December 8th, 57-51. Very tight game. Sean, the rematch is tonight, Thursday, January 4th.
That's
at
a huge
Snake
game.
River. Yes,
that's a huge game. Down in the Pantherville there in purple, and I'm sure that will be a very full gym in Snake River tonight. That's a big time game.
Yeah, Teton, we talk a lot about Snake River, right? And, Reese Baldwin and Riley Edlifson and all their great athletes. Teton's no slouch either. Reese Coons, Morgan Johnson are both returning starters. Abby Barkdole started last year as a sophomore. So this is a Teton team. Coach Pat Hogan has got a really good group of girls. Teton at Snake River tonight. We'll definitely be recapping this one on next week's edition of the East Idaho Prepcast. A couple more from the East Idaho Holiday Shootout. Bonneville went 2-1. Idaho Falls went 2-1. Century went 2-1. So Bonneville beats Spring Creek, Nevada, and Jordan, Utah. They lose to Teton 67-56. Idaho Falls beats a pair of Nevada teams, Elko and Spring Creek, and then they lost by almost 20 to Lakeland. And then Century picked up wins over Spring Creek and Elko. The Nevada schools just weren't up to snuff at this tournament.
No.
And then Century lost to Teton 53-16. Which team's 2-1 performance stood out the most to you between Bonneville, Idaho Falls, and Century?
I mean, they kind of all played the similar teams. Century did beat Idaho Falls once, but Idaho Falls a good performance. I kind of like Bonneville going in and getting third place. So in their bracket, they had a kind of a tough journey there, right? They get the one win and then they have to play Teton. But they beat two schools out of state. So I'm going to go with Bonneville.
Okay. Bees are a good choice there. They have a lot of great athletes that are coming over from that volleyball squad. That's always a powerhouse. They're 5-9 right now. But they do have, they've beaten Idaho Falls already in league play. They have been pretty close and competitive. They lost to Madison by only 2 earlier this year. So, this is a team that I think is, they've got a lot of good senior athletes, Ava Arfman, Alyssa Harris, etc. But in this District 6, it's so hard.
Yeah, maybe the hardest district in girls basketball, really. That's at that size and that many good teams that could compete. It's going to be tough. Yeah.
So that's the double-edged sword, right? You can, with it being pretty much league play from here on out. Bonneville is 1-3 in the conference. They can play themselves right up to the top, but by the same time, a lot of good teams standing in your way that you're going to have to navigate through. So, but good job for Bonneville to take third in their bracket at the East Idaho Holiday Shootout. All right, Sean, the next tournament up on the girls' side, let's go to the Timberline tournament. This is the big one that's hosted by Bora and Timberline over in the Boise area. Thunder Ridge and Hillcrest both went over to compete, and they both went 1-2. Thunder Ridge lost to Rocky Mountain by 9, 32-23, low-scoring game. They're the defending 5A runner-up from a year ago. They beat Cuna by 9, 43-34. And then they lost to Middleton by 18, 68-50. Hillcrest goes 1-2. They lost to Middleton as well, but it was only by 5, 53-48. They defeated Bora 46-38, and then they lost to Bishop Kelly in the finale 57-49. I'm more encouraged by Hillcrest's 1-2 showing. I mean, they lost by 5 to a 5A school, Middleton, and they only lost by 8 to Bishop Kelly, which is kind of consensus best team over in District 3.
Yeah, I think that's where you got to look towards, and when you play that team, Bishop Kelly, who's going to make it to the state tournament, has last few years, probably going to be the number 1 seed out of that district. So yeah, Hillcrest. I mean, but you also have to look. I mean, Rocky Mountain's second in the SIC right now in girls basketball, so that's a pretty good win too for Thunder Ridge, not Timberline, but Thunder Ridge. But yeah, I think moving forward in what matters, yeah, you've got to say Hillcrest did some good work there.
Yeah, and so for Hillcrest, looking at what's coming up now, Coach Alan Sargent's team is off to a good start this year, despite the win-loss record. You can't look at just the wins and losses because you're going to go, boy, they're 3-10. How good can they be? Well, look at who they've played. All right, they lost to Madison by 4. They have played Rigby twice. They have played Pocatello. They beat Thunder Ridge 39-37 by 2. They have lost to Blackfoot. They lost to Thunder Ridge. So they split the season series. Both games were within 7 points of each other. I mean, they've gone through the gauntlet. And Hillcrest was a game away from making state last year. They played Shelley for second place at the district tournament. Hillcrest, I think, is going to be right there again this year.
Yeah, I mean, that when you look at the schedule, this looks like maybe one of the toughest schedules. I mean, you're just playing all top-ranked teams, hard teams, in, week out, and you might not have the wins, but I mean, they're definitely going to have the wherewithal to know what's going on, right? They're going to have that when you've gone through hard times, you know what it's like, and when district tournament comes, that's what you need to win, is to go through the hard times. And the Hillcrest team is certainly. I mean, I'm looking at the schedule right now. That is a tough schedule.
It's brutal.
It's got to be one of the highest strength of schedules probably in 4A, I bet you.
Yeah, and I mean, they get right back into it Friday night. They host Skyline. That'll be an interesting. They still play Skyline twice. They've already lost to Shelley to start this year. They played Shelley last night, actually, and lost 65-31. But that race for number 2 is going to be interesting in both the high country conferences, 4A and 5A as well, Sean. If we're looking at the other side on Thunder Ridge, 5A Rigby is kind of the overwhelming favorite, right? But between Thunder Ridge, Madison, and Highland, any of them could get second at districts and go to a state play-in game. We just had last night, Madison went to Thunder Ridge and won by 6, 53-47. But I don't know. I don't know who gets that second spot.
Yeah, that will be tough. Madison's also played I think a fairly decent hard schedule too, so I'd kind of lean towards them right now. But Thunder Ridge is well coached too. They have some experience from last year at the tournament. And then Highland, I would say, is kind of a younger team, and sometimes when you're young and dumb, you just can find a way to win too in a tournament. So it's very open.
Yeah, to me it is pretty wide open, but you're right. Madison, they're 10-4. They've played a similarly, gauntlet-like schedule like Hillcrest has, for sure. All right, let's go and wrap up here with the Parma Holiday Tournament. Sean, American Falls went over to compete. They walk out with 4th place. They beat Nampa Christian in the opening round, 48-40. They fall to Weiser, the eventual tournament runner-up, by just 2, 45-43. And then they turn around and I think just were running out of gas. They lost to Parma, the host school, 54-30. But Weiser and Parma, 2 teams that are going to be in the mix for spots at the 3A state tournament. American Falls, I think Coach Grigg can take a lot from this tournament and how his team performed, and maybe that'll give them some confidence.
Yeah, you got definitely some perennial powers there in 3A, and American Falls went up and competed pretty well. And I mean, to get fourth, if you look at this bracket and say you're going to get fourth out of it, I think at the end of the day, as a Beaver, you're very happy. I think, you got up, you got some games, you had some tough ones too, but I think that's why you go to the tournament, to see what's out there, see what your team's made of. And I think it's really great for American Falls to do that. And it's not going to get any easier.
That's right. And let's not forget, American Falls has beaten Sugar Salem this year. They have played Malad pretty tightly, which is, they're 12-1 at the 2A ranks. They've played Teton. Really, it's going to come down to, those conference battles. The first one will come up next Wednesday, January 10th. American Falls will host Snake River. That's going to be the big matchup there. And we'll see, can the Beavers break through? It's going to be really interesting. I believe this league, I'm going to double check real quick. I think they get 2.5 bids this year. Or excuse me, 1.5 bids this year. 2.5 would be really crazy in a 3-team league, right? But I believe the second place team will play second place from District 6 in a play-in game. So yeah, that's exactly what it's going to be. Okay. So you're looking at potentially, like, coming down the pike, it could be like an American Falls Sugar Salem rematch. They've split already in the regular season, like a best of 3 series here.
Okay, that's pretty good. I mean, to put yourself in that position to get a chance to go, and I think that's all you can ask for as a coach.
Yeah, for sure. So, of course, South Fremont's going to be in the mix. Teton, Snake River. There's a lot to sort out still, but I don't know. Second place from District 5 and District 6 will play each other in a state tournament play-in game, a true play-in game. No, another game. Yeah, nothing like that. So
it's not really a free lunch. You still have to pay for something.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, that'll be interesting for sure. All right, let's move over to boys basketball. Sean, before we get to the East Idaho holiday shootout, I wanted to highlight Hillcrest. They traveled to the Classic at Damien. This is held every year at Damien High School in Laverne, California. This is one of the premier tournaments in the Western United States. Over, 70 teams come and compete at this thing. I think there was like 8 or 9 brackets this year. To give you an idea of who went down, Owyhee went down there, right? They're pretty good. Hillcrest also went down, though, to improve and really see how they stack up against really, truly elite teams. And Hillcrest went 1-3. They picked up a win over Rancho Cucamonga, which is just fun to say, right? These are all California schools. They beat Rancho Cucamonga 71-53. And then they had one kind of lopsided loss to Dublin, not Dublin, Ireland, but Dublin, California. They lost 87-50, but then a pair of one-possession losses. They lost to Rancho Christian 55-52, and they lost to Crean Lutheran 67-65. Hillcrest, again, you're going to look at that record and go, whatever. But I still think they are the favorites to defend their 4A title. I know Pocatello fans are going to hate me for saying that, but I really still believe Hillcrest is 1A, Pocatello 1B.
Yeah, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Is Pocatello the new number 1 team? Well, I think in the rankings they were the number 1 run team, and so they've got that. And yeah, and these are tough teams down in California. These are no jokes. These are like, there's the college scouts go and watch these teams. So these are tough games, and Hillcrest's record is what, 4-5. Are they in trouble? I don't think so. It'll be really interesting to see. My comparable will be when Preston plays Pocatello, because Hillcrest did beat Preston in the first game of the year, and I think that Preston Pocatello first game is going to be a blockbuster, which is coming up pretty soon here. So we'll see. And if Pocatello destroyed Preston, then I'd be a little worried for Hillcrest. But until I see something like that happen, Hillcrest is the defending champion until they're not.
Yeah, and I guess we can kind of use that Preston game, right? Hillcrest won 56-53. Without Ike Sutton and without Isaac Davis. So it's like, well, okay, that's like 2 of their top 3 players, or their best 2, if you want to go that way. But I mean, it's like, okay. Now they do play Preston again on January 24th. That might give us a good idea of where Preston also slots in this hierarchy. I'm bummed that, we couldn't get Pocatello and Hillcrest to play each other
at the pro image, right?
Yeah.
I think at the pro image in Boise, I think everyone was just really hoping for that matchup to happen, but may come sooner than later.
Yes. And everyone's going, well, how come Hillcrest and Pocatello didn't schedule it, independent of a tournament? Well, Hillcrest plays in a pretty large league, right? There's 6 teams. So over half of their schedule is already dedicated to conference play. It's hard for them to, there's only a finite amount of slots they can fill. And so,
you get a couple tournaments and your conference, you're pretty much done. You don't have too much wiggle room there.
Yeah. 2 games with Preston and a couple tournaments, and it's pretty much full. So I still think top 3, Hillcrest, Pocatello, Preston, in that order. And then there is a significant drop off to the rest of the state in 4A basketball. And sadly, one of those 3 is not going to make it. So it is what it is.
I'm sure someone will bring it up.
Okay. Let's go East Idaho Holiday Shootout. Let's start with the 5A teams that were there, Sean. Madison goes 2-0. They kind of played a modified schedule. I don't know if we really learned anything about Madison. They won 70-44 over Jordan, Utah, 72-46 over Boise. Boise is kind of a middle to lower end, team in the 5A Southern Idaho Conference. So, this just in, Madison's still really good.
Yeah. I would agree. That the tournament wasn't any sort of preview, I think, for Madison. I think they're going to be good. I think it's probably going to be between them and Rigby in that conference. And it's kind of a good segue into like Rigby, right? Rigby had a pretty good tournament. They beat that Boise team 60-44. They beat Timberline from Boise, and then they lost to Meridian just by 5 points in the championship bracket, right? 69-64. So if anything, it's kind of more of a, maybe Rigby's a little better than we thought they were.
Yeah. So Rigby, I think Sean lost to Timberline 39-24. And then what happened is that the championship was going to be Meridian versus Timberline, 2 teams that already play in the same conference. So they said, well, let's just swap partners here. And I think it worked out well for Rigby because they got a game with Meridian they wouldn't have otherwise gotten. And you're right. In that 3rd game on the 3rd day, they only lost 69-64. So Rigby, despite going 1-2, I thought had a really good showing. Highland went 2-1. And I think their competition wasn't as strong as Rigby's, right? They lost to Springville, Utah right away, which ended up, playing Timberline and I guess what you would call the championship. And then they beat Skyline and Jackson, Wyoming, 2 teams that are much smaller than Highland. I really don't know. After it's kind of like on the girls' side. After Madison, Highland's 5-5, Thunder Ridge is 5-5, Rigby's 5-6. Anybody could get that second spot. And Thunder Ridge was dealing with some injuries too, I think, and maybe when they're fully healthy, maybe they're that other team. But both it could be anyone's spot. I guess it's pretty close. I like Rigby doing well against that Meridian team. I think that helps them a little bit. Not at the typical powerhouse Meridian's been in the past, but still kind of playing a team, same size school, kind of getting a good slice of the pie there. I think Meridian's still pretty good. They'll be at state. I'll say that. So that's a good showing for Rigby. And Rigby lost almost everybody to graduation last year. But you know what we forgot? Justin Jones is a pretty good coach.
If you have the last name Jones and coach in East Idaho, you might know what you're doing. Is that what you're trying to say? Gotcha.
That's exactly. Yeah. So way to go, Rigby. Snake River in the smaller school bracket, if you will. Snake River won it. They went 3-0, Sean. They beat Jackson Hole 64-47. They beat Lakeland 77-55, and they boat raced Canyon Ridge in the championship 78-57. This was a game we had on IdahoSports.com, and it wasn't really close. Snake River doesn't have a ton of guys. I think it's like 8 or 9 guys on the varsity, but man, they can all hoop. That's for sure.
Yeah. Luke Higginson just reached 1,000 points for Snake River, and only the second person ever to do it in Snake River. So the first person was 1995. So it's been a long time since anyone scored 1,000 points for Snake River, and 1,000 points is a lot. I think that's means you're averaging about 20 points a game. So Snake River kind of quietly, boys wise, is sneakily good, I think, and just not on the radar, I think, as much as they should be. But that's a good team. That's a good output by them. They didn't really have any trouble.
Yeah. I did see, speaking of the 1,000-point club, I did see Cambry Barber from Rigby on the girls' side recently got to the 1,000-point total as well. And of course, we talked about Shay Shippen of Skyline becoming the school's all-time leading scorer the last time we were on here on the Prepcast as well. So,
and rebounder too, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive. Yeah. So yeah, Snake River's 9-2. But you know what, Sean? So's American Falls, and we're going to talk about them here in just a second. But to kind of wrap up from the East Idaho Holiday Shootout, Bonneville went 2-1. You know, they had a chance to play Snake River for the championship, and in their bracket, they lost to Canyon Ridge in the semis, 59-41. Otherwise, they beat Lakeland and Sugar Salem. The Sugar game was pretty close. You know, Sugar went 1-2. But all of their losses, all their games were like really close. They lost to Bonneville 56-48. They lost to Century in overtime, 53-48. That was a game on IdahoSports.com. And then they beat Idaho Falls 62-56. Sugar is 4-5. Here's what I know about Sugar. They kind of are alternating, you know, big winning streaks, and then they go on a little slide. They're still missing some guys. They don't have their full team yet. This is a team nobody's going to want to play in like 3 weeks. You can just mark it down.
They had some players lingering from some football stuff, and I think once they get them all back, I think they're gonna be they're definitely that team you don't want to play. You're going to look at the record and kind of think, oh, they've lost all these games. They're close games, but I think when they have the full complement of all their players, they're going to be dangerous.
Snake River 9-2. One of those losses was to Sugar Salem by 2, 63-61. So the rematch comes later this month. Century went 1-2. They lost to Canyon Ridge. They had the overtime win over Sugar Salem, and then they lost to Filer pretty decidedly, 77-49. And then Skyline and Idaho Falls, two of the host schools, Sean, they each go 0-3. The Grizz lose to Lakeland in overtime, 77-74. They lose to Highland by 3, 53-50. And then they lose to Spring Creek, Nevada by just 7, 60-53. Idaho Falls drops a pair of games. They go 0-2. They lost to Filer, 64-52. They lost to Sugar, 62-56. So Skyline and Idaho Falls go a combined 0-5, but all of the games were, you know, within single digits.
Yeah. So again, I think like you're saying, the boys too, and the boys in District 6 basketball, that's going to be, it's kind of a tight race into that second place. You've got to think Hillcrest is a good shot at winning that district, but who wins that second place? I don't think Blackfoot's any slouch either. And yeah, there's just a lot of good teams, and you've got a Shelley team that can come and win it anywhere too. So definitely, I think it's going to be a hard-nosed race for that second slot.
Yeah, Skyline is 2-0 in league play to start with a 3-point win over Blackfoot, 67-64, and then a 12-point win over Idaho Falls. But even that, 12 points is pretty respectable, and that's from Idaho Falls, a team that's 0-8. So even like top all the way to the bottom, very tough league.
It's close. Yeah, it's going to be, kind of what happens that night. And like I said, like I usually say, it's just, all that happens. Then you get to the district tournament. You can maybe just throw out the door if someone gets hot or, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, there's going to be some really good district tourney action this year. No doubt about it. All right, let's go. We talked about Snake River's 9-2. American Falls is also 9-2. Sean, like the girls, the Beavers went over to the Parma Holiday Tournament. And American Falls takes third place. They go 2-1. They beat Payette in the opening round, 62-25. Then they played the Owyhee JV in the semifinals and only lost by 8, 53-45. And let's be honest, Hawaii's JV could probably be the starting five at a lot of those SIC schools and on the varsity. So there's no shame there. And then they played Parma, the hosts, in the third place game, and they win 68-62. So this was a good tournament for Coach Bauer and the Beavers.
Yeah, American Falls gym must just be buzzing, right? Both the girls and boys are doing really well, and you've got to like that they went up there and did well at this tournament. And it says Hawaii JV, but I think that JV beats a lot of teams that have starters. So good job by American Falls. And so American Falls, Snake River, right? And I'm sure that's what you're looking up. Is what's going to be kind of be the highlight coming up here.
Yeah, they'll play twice. January 23rd in American Falls, February 2nd at Snake River. So a lot to be decided there still. But for American Falls, they've played a lot of 2A schools here in the early going as they have tried to get their basketball legs under them after a run in the football playoffs. But yeah, 9-2 versus 9-2. It's really fun to see. No, what I was looking up was, we didn't mention this a couple of weeks ago, but American Falls is buzzing, Sean, and I'm sure you saw this. Former American Falls standout and Idaho State University soccer standout Maria Sanchez is now the highest paid player in professional soccer in America. She signed a contract to remain with the Houston Dash, and she is the NWSL, the National Women's Soccer League's highest paid player from American Falls. Way to go, Maria Sanchez.
Yeah, there's Pauline Theros, the athletic director of ISU, posted a video about it, and it's just phenomenal to watch. Just coming from American Falls, scoring 1 million goals and going to ISU for a little bit and moving on, and then just kind of on a whim went out and tried for that national Mexico team and made it. And now, I mean, just what an incredible story. But I found that interesting. Just kind of, I guess I'll go try out, see what happens. And wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It's a remarkable story for sure. So every time somebody mentions Leighton Vander Esch, hey, we got to talk about, Maria Sanchez too.
Absolutely. There you go.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, last bit of holiday tournament action here, Sean. Water Springs, all the way down at the 1A D2 level. They went to the truckstop.com tournament over in New Plymouth. They took third place in their bracket. They beat Nampa Christian's JV 70-49. They lost to the eventual champions from Garden Valley in the semifinals by only 4, 44-40. And then they beat Adrian, Oregon 66-48 to claim third place. That Garden Valley team is really, really good. And so for Water Springs to push them and only lose by 4, eye-opener for me.
Yeah, Water Springs, again, in that Rocky Mountain Conference, that's just a grind in day out. It's a big showing there. A couple wins, and yeah, the Garden Valley team is definitely what stands out to me, and only be down by 4, and now Water Springs at 9-1. That was their first loss of the year. So Water Springs, watch out.
I mean, they got to state last year, and they ended up playing Rockland in the third place game at state. I ended up broadcasting that game on IdahoSports.com. I was over there in Caldwell, in amongst the Rockland fans, because at Caldwell there's no place to broadcast except the bleachers. So I had a great time. But I remember thinking, like, boy, this Water Springs team is like good. But at the same time, I'm like, man, they do lose a couple of big studs in Drew Plocker and Daniel Canfield, who left as the school's all-time leading scorer. And so I was kind of curious. Evan Bindennagel, who's in his second year as the boys basketball coach there. He's also first-year athletic director at Water Springs as well. I was kind of wondering, okay, how is Water Springs going to be? And they have a lot of height on the team this year. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players that are 6 feet or taller, Sean, including 6'10" junior Titus Driver. That'll get the job done.
Yeah, that'll drive it right home, won't it? I mean, that's a lot of height for a 1A D2. I don't think you're gonna see many teams with that much height. Period.
Yeah. I can't wait for him and Teague
Matthews
to go one-on-one.
When is the Rocky Mountain Conference dunk competition? When's their all-star break, man? I want to go see that.
Oh man. Water Springs will play Rockland in Rockland on January 18th. So yeah, and it's been good wins for Water Springs. I mean, they beat Salmon, a 2A school. They have beaten Raft River, a 1A D1. Hanson's a 1A D1. Chalice is a 1A D1. So yeah, Water Springs, keep an eye on the Warriors. And we talked about the 6'10", Titus driver, but really, the guys that key the attack are on the perimeter. Jackson Aldinger, 6'1" senior. And then they've got this sophomore, Ryan Demkowitz, who's he can really light it up and fill it up too. Ryan Demkowitz, a 6'2" sophomore. His name will become more prevalent, as he plays more. But man, the Demkowitz kid can really play too. So yeah, keep an eye on Water Springs. Your current standings, Sean. North Gem is 1-0 in the conference. They are 6-3 overall. Alturas Prep, I got to figure out, are they 1A D1 or 1A D2? That's what I got to figure out with them. They're one of the newcomers this year. And they're playing kind of a modified schedule, but they're off to a decent start, 4-3. But it's Water Springs at 9-1, Rockland at 7-3. Those are the two big dogs, I think. And the North Gem, I think, is going to be in the mix there as well. But that's kind of my top three.
Yeah, I don't think you can count Rockland out at this point. They're just 7-3, but they haven't played any of the games that count towards the conference. Remember, right? Not all the games they play count towards that conference ranking, but it'll be pretty interesting to see what happens as this goes on.
And Rockland's played a tough schedule also. They've lost to Butte County. They've lost to Camas County, which is a 1A D2, state title favorite. They lost to Victory Charter at the small school shootout, which is a really good team. So, yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun in that wild Rocky Mountain Conference here as we get going into basketball season. All right, Sean, we were off for 2 weeks. We're back and better than ever. And we really get into it now. The tournaments are over. And it is strictly league play, who's going to beat who and who's going to rise to the top. I'm looking forward to it.
And then I just had one other thing. Did you see that Grace and Oakley girls and boys both played in the Delta Center? I thought that was kind of a cool little snippet that they both played in the Delta Center and then got to stay and watch the game. So that's a cool experience. Both Grace and Oakley to go down there and play a little basketball in it's called the Delta Center again. I never stopped calling it that. So I'm glad they went back to it. It helps me out.
Did the name change at some point?
It was called something Vivid. Maybe it was called something else for a while. I mean, I would say people predominantly my age would always call it the Delta Center, but it did change for a little bit. But I think it's back to the Delta Center.
Okay, gotcha.
I think. I don't know. It says Delta Center on the court on these pictures from Grace School District's website. So
yes. And I think the Vivint Center is where Utah State. I think Vivint picked up the naming rights to Utah State.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. After they lost out on the Jazz. So that's interesting. And Sean, yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Grace and Oakley did a girls boys doubleheader on New Year's Day, no less, at the Delta Center where the Utah Jazz play. And we are going to dive into that more on the Magic Valley Prepcast tomorrow. Scott Burton reached out to the Oakley coaches, got some really cool pictures.
Oh, nice.
And then Kyle Christensen, the coach from Grace, actually was like, hey, here's some more pictures and here's kind of the Grace side of it. So,
I sold Scott's thunder, huh?
Yeah. Well, that's what Scott gets for not recording today. I mean, he had the shot at it. So
well, he was too busy at football games in California and whatnot. So
that's right. That's right. All right, Sean, before we duck out of here, friend of the program, Greg Woods. Legends.
Oh boy. Hey, Greg. I miss Greg up. He probably didn't miss it, but I missed him up in the football booth with Seth, giving us stats and stuff when it was cold. And yeah. But congrats, Greg, on your new journey.
People who read the Idaho State Journal and Pocatello, I hope you realize like how good you had it with Jordan K first, and then Greg after that. Like two, like no offense, but two writers that were bigger than the Pocatello market, right? Better.
I would agree.
So the readership there, I think, was very lucky, and I think they're seeing it now. They're hurting. I mean, they got a sports staffer that doesn't even live in Pocatello. So
yeah, I mean,
it's hard.
One day we'll have to rank, who was better, Jordan or Greg, and
tail of the tape.
Yeah, I'll bring in some articles, some data, but yeah, no, both great guys, and they did write really well. And Jordan moved to somewhere else. He's not in Boise anymore, so
no,
I loved his Boise stuff. So
yeah,
yeah, good writers. They can spell a lot of grammar.
Yes, for sure. And just their style of writing too. Jordan Kay is on the South Carolina beat.
South Carolina,
he covers the Gamecocks. And of course, Greg Woods moved on as well. And so Greg, keep up the good work. He is now on the Washington State beat for the Cougs.
They're lucky to have him.
Sean, if you figure out where the Cougs are playing next year, what conference, let us know.
Did you ever hear that interview from I can't remember what college football coach, and he said he said do away with the conference, you have these games, you play them, and then he made like the best argument ever, but it was just basically you get to schedule this and then you're done, and then that's it, but they'll never happen. But
you know who that was?
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it was Chip Kelly at UCLA.
Yeah, it was great. I thought that was great.
Yeah. Yep. It made a lot of sense. But all right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to the East Idaho Prepcast here on IdahoSports.com. Enjoy the competitions coming up. Some really good basketball games get cooking here to ease us into the new year. And we'll see you back here next week. For Sean Kane, I'm Brandon Baney. Thanks for tuning in on IdahoSports.com.